Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada-Gore. This is episode 56, and this is an early holiday present for you. Not only do you get the episode ahead of schedule, because we usually release on Mondays, as you know, but it is just a little longer than our usual 30-minute segments. Why? Because this is a show that highlights the best of 2016. You will hear 3 segments from episodes that were among the most popular this past year. We'll start with Dr. Tom Cowan, a holistic doctor with a private practice in California. Tom talks about his own skepticism and how you need a healthy dose of it when you're advocating for your own health with conventional or holistic doctors. He probes into the deeper reasons behind why people get sick. If you have a chronic health condition, this discussion may shed light on why you may not have gotten to the root of the problem. Tom, I understand you're a holistic physician. What does that mean, a holistic physician?
So I guess the word holism means that I try to take a more comprehensive view of the human being and health and disease. And I think that probably is more the sort of formal definition. I think for me, it means that I try to look at what I would call deeper reasons behind why people get sick and then why they get well.
And how did you get into this?
Well, I would say that I was in some ways groomed to be a doctor as an early child, teenage years, etc. On the other hand, though, I was, from the word go, very skeptical of the many doctor friends that my parents had. They exposed me to lots of doctors, and every once in a while I would go and spend time in their office or in the hospital, and I would sort of drive them crazy because there was something in me that just didn't buy it. And the thing that I didn't buy was what I call the superficiality of their conclusions. I can give you an example if you'd like.
Love it, yes.
So one of the things I routinely tell my patients, and this gets into, in some ways, what my definition of what a holistic doctor is the job of a doctor is to distinguish the therapy and the disease and not confuse the two. Mm-hmm. And the simplest example I use is, let's say you get a splinter in your finger and don't take it out. So what happens next is you get pus around the splinter. So then you go to the doctor and you say, look, I have pus in my finger. And he says, oh, the pus is the disease. Let's give you an antibiotic and get rid of it. Well, that's obviously, let's use the word silly, because the pus is the therapy for the splinter. And the only solution for it, this problem, because the splinter is the disease, the pus is the therapy, is to take the splinter out. And then the pus miraculously will go away on its own. Now, that's a stupid example, and probably even doctors don't make that mistake.
Right.
But let's take another example. Routinely in medical offices around the country and the world, you see people who smoke. So those people are putting splinters in their lungs. And then they go to the doctor because they have, quote, bronchitis, which means they're coughing up mucus and debris. So they go to the doctor and he says, you have bronchitis, you have to take this antibiotic. Well, the reality is the mucus and coughing and fever, etc., are the pus. They're the way to get the debris out of your lungs. And if you make that philosophical mistake, meaning you're confused between the therapy and the disease, and you keep giving people antibiotics for the splinters in their lungs, what happens is they do that twice a year for 20 years, which is the usual history of smokers, and then they get lung cancer. So what is lung cancer? This is a little simplistic, I would admit, but lung cancer is a bag of debris in your lungs.
Wow.
Why is it there? Because somebody stopped you from getting it up and out. Who? the doctor. Why did he do that? Because he's confused. He's confused between the therapy and the disease. And that's why all natural medicines, or what I would call any rational approach, so to me, it's not really holistic, it's just sensible. A sensible approach is to help the person get the debris out of their lungs and then say, don't put any more debris in your lungs.
So you could see this as a teenager. That's why you were bothering all the doctors that you met. Like you
Yes.
kind of intuited something's not right here.
Right. They would ask them, why do I have this? I'll answer, and whenever you ask a doctor why you have such and such, they say genetics, stress, or I don't know. Why do I have lupus? Why do I have rheumatoid arthritis? Why do I have cancer? Why do I have pus in my lungs? I don't know. It's stress. Well, I don't know what they mean by stress, so I ignore that. I mean, it's not good to have a miserable life, I would say. But the reality is most of these things are reactions of the body, which are therapeutic reactions. And only a silly person would base their career on stopping therapeutic reactions. Unfortunately, that silliness extends to 99% of medical practice. They get rid of the effect, not the cause. Now, the way you can tell that somebody is dealing with effect and not cause is if, just like imagine if you treated the splinter with antibiotics. What would happen is the splinter wouldn't go away, right? And then it would happen again. The pus would start again and again and again. Maybe body would wall it off and say, forget it. If this guy's going to keep doing that, I'm just going to make a cyst around it so it'll be there forever. Mm-hmm. So then you get a tumor, essentially. But anytime you see a disease that becomes chronic, meaning ongoing, that means somebody messed around with the therapeutic attempt. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis or if you have asthma and they stop the reaction, then it becomes chronic, just like the pus and the splinter. And so an absolute telltale sign that you're not dealing with the problem, you're dealing with the reaction, is if that situation becomes chronic. Now, I would ask all your listeners, go to the doctor and say, with any condition, not like a cold, but rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, arthritis, asthma, eczema, and say, this medicine that you're going to give me, is this going to cure me so that in whatever weeks, months, days, years, I will no longer have eczema or whatever? I can guarantee the answer will be, no, that can't happen.
Wow.
Why can't it happen? It can't happen because if you're treating the pus, of course it can't happen. That's never going to happen. The tragedy of medicine, as I often say, is not that we can't cure everything, because that's hard and maybe complicated, and I get it that, I can't either, so it's hard. The tragedy is, A, we don't try. B, we laugh at people who do try. If you go and say, what can I do differently? What can I eat differently? What can I move differently? What can I think differently so I don't have asthma anymore? They'll laugh you out of the office. That's ridiculous. You can't eat or do anything. You have a spasm in your lungs. We don't know why. Take this anti-spasm stuff. It'll work as long as it's there, then it'll get worse. So we give you more and you're fine.
And I think sometimes people see their chronic condition as, well, that's just how it is. They kind of buy what they're being told, right? Well, yes. I guess as long as I don't feel the pain, I'll just take these, 2 Advil every day and hope for the best.
Right. Meanwhile, those 2 Advil every day, we know deteriorate your kidney function significantly over the years. They deteriorate your GI function. They change your gut flora, which changes just about everything. And that's not benign. And not only isn't it benign, it has no chance of leading to resolution of your problem. And everybody admits that. go to the doctor and say, will this Advil lead to resolution of my arthritis? Meaning, will there be a day when I don't have arthritis? No, of course not.
But then why, the doctors can't be satisfied with that themselves either, right? Or are they deceiving themselves? I know we're speaking in general terms, but why wouldn't they think, gosh, this is only treating the symptom and not the root cause?
So a lot of people ask me that through the years. I used to try to answer it, and now my smart aleck part of me says, I don't know, why don't you ask them?
Right.
I don't want to speak for them. What I can tell you is my experience is in medical school and training was, this is a wide generalization. I'm sure my wife would not like me to hear me say this. They're basically not interested.
Right.
They're not interested in medicine. I would, do medicine and spend 5 hours at night reading about traditional diets and what the Inuit did if you got a splinter in your finger, because I wanted to know, what are the options out there? What do people think about this? What kind of philosophies are there out there? If I said that to my fellow students, it was, why? What are you even interested in this for? This is irrelevant. We're learning the dose of penicillin. When you go to day one, of medical school, microbiology, you would think, oh, okay, what are the role of microbes in nature? They're scavengers. They eat debris. Mm-hmm. You don't go to a compost pile and throw stuff like meat that doesn't belong in a compost pile. Then you get funky bacteria, and you say, oh, your compost pile has an infection. That's ridiculous. The stinky bacteria biodegrade the inappropriate stuff you put in the compost, right?
Right.
It's not an infection. It's how nature uses microbes to break things down. You would think that would be day one of microbiology, but it isn't. Day one of microbiology is strep causes sore throats. Here's the life cycle of strep. Is this cyst and this spore and who knows? I don't even remember. Kill it with penicillin. If that doesn't work, use Zithromax. Next one is the virus that caused chickenpox. Here's what it looks like under a microscope. Here's how to kill it. Can't kill it. Just forget about it.
I get it.
That's
so
it.
It's almost like, to be honest with you, when I hear you say this, it seems that's easier to wrap your head around than to do some deep investigation to find out more about what the causes of these diseases. Do you see what I'm saying? Like maybe it's just easier, simpler not to dig around into the root of everything. It's just, here's the problem, here's how you treat it. And it's also quicker for the doctor in the office when you visit him for him to say, okay, here's the prescription, than it is for him to delve into the whole of you.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I don't really exactly agree with that because I can be very quick. I don't need to spend an hour and a half talking about people's feelings to say, you have a splinter in your finger, we're going to take that damn thing out. And I guarantee your pus will go away. Finished. See you later. Out, splinter. I don't need to.
Outpatient, be gone with you.
Yeah, I don't need to talk about. I mean, I'm happy to talk about people's feelings if they want to, but you see what I mean? It's not that. It's not quicker. It's not easier to learn. It's easy to learn why microbes live in nature. It just takes a little bit of interest. It's not that. It's a manipulated system. It's manipulated so that we create consumers of medicine. That's what's behind it, not that this is so difficult to learn or it's not quick or it's just a business.
Wow, Tom is fascinating, don't you think? He is also the author of a book that has just come out entitled Human Heart, Cosmic Heart, A Doctor's Quest to Understand, Treat, and Prevent Cardiovascular Disease. For a link on where to find the book or to find out more about Tom, click on Podcast on the westinaprice.org website and click on the show notes for episode 56. Hey, and if you want to hear the episode in its entirety, go to the Foundation's website or iTunes or YouTube or wherever you get the show and look for episode number 2, which is called The Deeper Reasons Behind Why People Get Sick. Next, we get to hear from Charlotte Smith. She is a dynamic woman with a remarkable story. Her children struggled with eczema, and it was so severe that she was grasping at straws trying to find a cure. Eventually, it led her to raw milk. This discovery changed the trajectory of her life. And today, among other endeavors, Charlotte is the owner of Shampoo Egg Creamery, a micro dairy in Oregon. Do you want to know why people are pushing for the legalization of raw milk in all 50 states? Are you curious about what draws people into drinking raw milk in the first place? Charlotte sheds light on all of the above. Welcome to the podcast, Charlotte.
Thank you so much, Hilda. It's great to be here.
So I understand what got you going in this field of raw milk is that you had children who weren't well. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, about 10 years ago, both of my kids had had eczema for about 6 years, and they each developed it when they were 6 years old. So it just, one day it wasn't there, and the next day it was, and it was all over large parts of their body. My daughter, it was covering her face completely, even her eyelids, and it was very, very miserable. They're 22 and 19 now, so they were 12 and 9 at the time.
So they're just covered with eczema. So what did you do? What did you put on them? What did the doctor recommend?
The only thing the doctor recommended when they, even from the time they first came down to it, was steroid cream, which of course we had and we put on at the very worst, especially on my daughter's eyelids, just whenever we had to. And in that 6 years, people recommended all sorts of things. That was way before Facebook. So I was just in moms groups and things. People would say, well, have you tried this vitamin or this herb or this salve or this cream and lotion? And in that 6 years, I tried everything because as a mother of sick children, I was desperate for them to have some relief. So I thought if something was going to work, we were going to do it. So I had different vitamins. And in that 6 years, nothing worked. So I kept trying things and they were still miserable.
So what did you do next?
I had a conversation with someone who just casually mentioned that they had heard an MD speak in California and said where raw milk is legal. And he had said that people were using raw milk to cure their kids' eczema, allergies, and asthma. And this was the first I'd never even heard of raw milk before then, before 10 years ago, because it wasn't available in Oregon very easily. And I was raised very much on processed foods. You went to the store and you bought your skim milk and that was it. But I was willing to try anything, like I said. So I got on the internet and did a search for raw milk and came up with all this information I didn't know existed. I found the Weston Price Foundation. And I found a list of raw milk producers by state. And I actually found someone in our town who had raw milk for sale. And I kind of had to go underground to find it. I had to promise not to tell anybody where I got it because it's legal in Oregon it was on a much more limited basis back then. And I just thought that like everything else I had tried, it was worth a shot. So I brought the raw milk home. And we each had, half a cup or so. And of course, I had zero expectations because in the past 6 years, nothing had worked. I was still searching for what would help my kids, but I really doubted that anything would. But 2 weeks after starting to drink raw milk, and like I said, it wasn't even very much, my son came out and showed me the backs of his hands. He came out of his bedroom and said, "Look, Mom." And up until that point, for 3 years, the backs of his hands were constantly bloody and scabby from just incessant itching. And 2 weeks after starting to drink raw milk, they were completely smooth. They hadn't really itched, in a day since we started. And to me, that was just a miracle. I couldn't believe it because I had not at that point been introduced to the concept of food as medicine. Uh-huh. All I knew that, I was raised thinking we had to eat healthy, like low fat, everything, drink Diet Pepsi instead of juice, eat granola bars, boneless, skinless chicken breast for dinner, stay away from fat at all costs. So all of a sudden, it was like a miracle to me. And I realized that what I eat and what we eat today affects our health today. And then my son's eczema went away completely within about a month or so. My daughter had had eczema for 3 years longer, and it took longer for hers to go away. She was probably completely healed in about 6 months. It started going away slowly, but 6 months later, it was completely gone.
I can just imagine your relief and surprise. Again, you were skeptical because you had had a long time searching for something that would be efficacious with your kids and nothing was working. So I can just imagine how you felt.
Oh, yeah. Again, as a mother, we would do anything. We would give a kidney to our children, have surgery, have an arm removed, give them whatever we could to make them feel good. And my kids were miserable and I couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, it was a crazy miracle. And then they weren't the only ones to benefit. So then after we'd been drinking it for that first year, I looked back over the year and realized that, number one, I had seasonal allergies my whole life. So 6 months of the year, I took over-the-counter allergy medication just to be able to walk outside. It was terrible. And I realized that I didn't have to take any medication the next summer.
Wow.
And now it is 10 years later, and I still don't take any medication or have allergies. And also looking over that first year of drinking raw milk, I realized that in years past, my kids who were 9 and 12 were like all the other kids in their school, and they had 1 or 2 rounds of antibiotics every winter for a cold that it turned into an ear infection or bronchitis. That was just normal. And I was totally fine living with that because everybody else's kids were sick and the doctors were used to it. They knew immediately what drug to give us. So I didn't think anything of that. But looking back over the first year, nobody had gone to the doctor. None of us had had even so much as a sniffle. And then now, looking back 10 years, in the last 10 years, none of us have had antibiotics. None of us get sick for, maybe a slight sniffle or something. My kids went all through public school, and other kids even got to the point where they thought they were kind of weird because they never got sick because everybody else gets sick all the time. So it has it's just changed our life.
Didn't you have reservations as a mom? You said you hadn't heard anything about raw milk, but didn't you hear enough to know that some people thought it was dangerous?
Well, no. I suppose now looking back, maybe I should have had reservations, but I'd never heard of it. And just like I'd never heard of any of those other creams and potions and herbs and vitamins, whatever a mom or somebody recommended I try for my kids, I ran out and got it and tried it. I did not read the research. Maybe that was a bad mom thing to do, but no, I was desperate. And if someone said, oh, try zinc capsules, they'll work, I went out and got them. I did not bother reading the side effects.
But what about the mom right now who's listening thinking, I'm scared of raw milk? You say it brought healing to your family, but I've heard too many horror stories. What would you tell her?
Well, that's a really good place to be nowadays. There has been so much more exposure of raw milk in the last 10 years, so people do hear about it. And also, there's a few things to remember. People, the worst stories are the ones that get passed on. Raw milk it's unprocessed. Milk is pasteurized or more than boiled to remove any pathogenic bacteria that might have gotten in there. So in our world today around the US, where many states raw milk production is unregulated, the conditions it's produced in can be sketchy. So the parent or the person, the consumer of raw milk, has to educate themselves and has to do their own homework to make sure they're getting really good, safe raw milk.
This is how I think of it sometimes. Raw milk, when it's good, is amazing. But raw milk, when it's bad or poorly prepared or processed or, gotten, is really bad, right?
Yeah. And there have been very few illnesses caused by raw milk directly. The CDC is able to skew the statistics so they can take things like raw milk cheeses that people might be making, and cheeses can be a lot more susceptible to things like listeria because it can be made in a kitchen and that's in our drain and it sits in cultures. So then they take all those statistics from raw milk cheese and put them in there, lump them together, and make it look like raw milk makes people sick. But when you break it down, and there's lots of research on the internet to show how this is, there really aren't illnesses from raw milk. Certainly no deaths in the last 30 years. There was an E. coli outbreak on a farm in Oregon near ours about 4 years ago, and they just lived about 15 minutes from our house. And that did sicken people, but those people were producing milk in filthy conditions. If you went to their farm, and you can see pictures of their farm on the internet, common sense tells you do not eat or drink anything from that farm. They were so negligent. So I think if a person, a mother, a father prepares themselves, for instance, I have a list of things on my website, how to find safe raw milk. If they have a list of these things and they go out searching for raw milk in maybe their unregulated state, they can be really sure they're going to find safe raw milk. Because raw milk, if you do the things that now I have gone on to start a website called rawmilkpro.com, where I teach other raw milk producers how to produce safe milk. If you do the things I teach, you are going to produce safe raw milk every single time you milk the cows. But what happens is, if raw milk is expensive to produce, so if people start cutting corners because it's expensive, that's when some of the safety precautions can be dropped. We have hundreds of safety precautions on our farm, and those are things I put in my document I hand out to people to help find safe raw milk, is ask the farmer if they do all these things and build a relationship with that person, and then you can be sure that you're finding safe raw milk.
Oh my gosh, Charlotte is fantastic. If you want to hear this episode in its entirety, go to the Foundation's website or iTunes or YouTube, wherever you get the show, and find episode number 10 called Raw Milk, One Story. Hey, and a quick note before we move on. The Weston A. Price Foundation is putting out this podcast because that's what they do. They want to help people understand the link between good health and traditional foods and ways. If you have been loving the show, could you go to our Patreon account? That's Patreon, Patreon.com, and make a donation of any size. There are giving levels, and each level has a perk. One of the main ones is actually just being able to connect with us on a deeper level and interact with us behind the scenes. Another way to give is just to go to westonaprice.org and click on the donate button. If you become a member for about $40, you can get all kinds of perks this coming year, including a quarterly journal and a shopping guide to help you discern the best foods that are going to optimize your health. Thank you so much for helping us make a difference. We appreciate you. Now we get to hear from world-renowned Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. She is the author of the book Gut and Psychology Syndrome. It has sold over 500,000 copies. Why has it done so well? Because Natasha knows how to make clear to us the link between our overall health and our gut health. She explains what is known as leaky gut syndrome and its tie to numerous chronic illnesses. Listen and learn how the body can heal itself. Welcome to the podcast, Natasha.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Natasha, tell us, how did you even get into this field? How did you start to realize this connection between the gut and the mind and physiology?
Well, I grew up in a traditional culture where food is medicine. Food is the most powerful influence on health, on the body. And that detoxification is very important on a regular basis. But I was a mainstream doctor working with the mainstream tools. And when I was a neurologist and a neurosurgeon. And I remember that I've noticed that vast majority of my neurological patients had digestive symptoms. And of course, as neurologists, we don't examine digestive system. We just call gastroenterologist for a consultation and ask them to deal with that. But I remember I questioned, has it got anything to do with the neurological picture that we see in the patients? And when I got married and had my first child, at the age of 3, he was diagnosed as autistic, severely autistic. And that threw me into a very steep learning curve. Literally, very quickly, I've discovered that my own profession had absolutely nothing to offer my beloved child. And I wasn't prepared to accept that. And the result of that search and the result of that learning curve was that my son has recovered fully. He is now a young man at university, leading a normal, healthy life, enjoying himself. And I realized that it is a perfectly curable condition, despite the fact that the whole world believes it to be incurable. And that's how my clinic began. I started working with autistic children in my clinic, and that's how the whole thing snowballed.
Did you really just say that he recovered fully?
He has. He's completely fully recovered. He's a healthy, beautiful, active young man. He's actually studying media and communication at university at the moment.
Wow, that's fantastic. I bet there are so many people that desire that for themselves or for their children.
I don't believe there are incurable conditions, and I don't believe there are hopeless situations. There are incurable conditions, of course. In any situation, there is hope. And if your mainstream doctor has nothing to offer you, it doesn't mean that the answer doesn't exist elsewhere. Don't close that chapter. Go on searching. Thank to your doctor, say thank you to them, leave the office, but go on searching. Because we live in a wonderful world of easily available information. You can always find information on any kind of question today. This is much easier than what I had when my child was born. There was no internet when that happened, and we had no emails. So the only thing we could do is to go to a local library and start searching literature and look for books to read. Today, this is much easier for people to find answers. So keep searching for answers because they are out there.
I understand you've written this book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome, Natural Treatment for Autism, ADHD, Dyslexia, Dyspraxia, Depression, and Schizophrenia. That is a tall order. Is there really a natural way to heal these conditions?
Yes, there's only a natural way of healing these conditions. There is no other way. Because it is our own human bodies that heal us. Not the doctor, not the pill, not the diet, not anything else that we might throw at ourselves. It's your own body that's doing the healing. And all we have to do is provide the body with natural means, tools to heal itself. And that's the only way you can heal any kind of chronic condition.
So I understand that you're saying there's an association between the gut and how our brain and our whole body functions, right? That the gut is kind of the brain of the body. I've heard people put it that way. Is that true?
Absolutely. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, all those thousands of years ago, has made a statement that all diseases begin in the gut. And the more we study chronic illness with our modern scientific tools, the more we realize just how correct he was. What happens? The gut holds the roots of our human health, because recent research has demonstrated the fact that the microbes that live inside the digestive system, called gut flora, or microbiome, that's the new scientific word for it, is about 90% of us. About 90% of all cells and all genetic material in your body is your gut flora. So your body is just 10%, just a shell, a habitat for this mass of microbes that live inside you. And we ignore them at our peril. The more we're researching them, the more we realize that they actually the rulers of our metabolism. They are the rulers of our nervous system, our immune system, and pretty much every organ, no matter how far from the digestive system that organ might be. And what happens in children and adults with gut and psychology syndrome, gut and physiology syndrome as well, both thankfully abbreviate to the same gaps in the English language, gut and psychology and gut and physiology. What happens in these people? Their gut flora is damaged. It becomes abnormal. It develops unbalanced, abnormal mixture of microbes in there, where pathogenic disease-causing microbes predominate. And what they do, they digest the food in their own way, converting it into a whole river of toxicity, toxic substances, and depriving the body of nutrition. So the person develops multiple nutritional deficiencies because their food is not digesting properly. At the same time, there's a river of toxicity flowing from the gut into the bloodstream, getting distributed around the body, and wherever these toxins get to, they cause disease.
People are eating food, but it's not nourishing them. It's like it's going in, but it's not going into the right places.
Absolutely. No matter how high a quality food you might be eating the best food in the world. But if your digestive system cannot digest it properly, that food will do you no good. And our gut flora is a major player in the digestive process. In a healthy person, the gut flora is dominated by certain species of microbes, and we have beneficial bacteria and beneficial fungi and beneficial viruses and beneficial protozoa and even beneficial worms. It is a highly, highly complex world inside there. It is no less complex and amazing than the life on our planet Earth. So in a normal person, in a healthy person with a healthy gut flora, the food arrives there, the gut flora works on it, it gets digested properly. The gut flora at the same time looks after the integrity of the gut wall, making sure that your digestive system is in a good shape to digest food and absorb food appropriately. And then the food is nourishing you. But if your gut flora is damaged, which means you've taken too many antibiotics, or perhaps you've got amalgam fillings in your teeth, or you're drinking toxic water, or you're taking something else toxic with food and drink. So your gut flora gets damaged, beneficial species of microbes get grossly diminished or disappear altogether, and they get replaced by pathogenic species of microbes. So your gut flora is dominated by disease-causing bacteria, fungi, viruses, protozoa, worms, and all sorts of creatures in there. So they digest food in their own way, not the way it's supposed to be digested, and they damage the integrity of the gut wall, making it porous and leaky. So all these toxins then that are generated in your digestive system, that the food turns into a whole river of toxicity, absorb through that damaged gut wall, and the live microbes absorb too. They get through the gut wall into your bloodstream and get distributed around the body. And wherever they get to, they cause disease. So when they get into the brain, they cause gut and psychology syndrome. If they get into any other organ in the body, they would cause gut and physiology syndrome.
The common term is leaky gut, right? And you're saying that this leaky gut can lead to all kinds of problems mentally, but also some physical conditions.
Absolutely. Our science has discovered best part of 200 different autoimmune conditions where your own immune system is attacking your body, attacking your own organs and causing illness in you. All autoimmune diseases born in the gut, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, and various neuropathies, and various allergies, asthma, eczema, nephropathy, chronic cystitis, psoriasis, you name it, pretty much any degenerative long-term chronic disorder usually stems from the state of the digestive system in the person. Because about 85% of our immune system is located in the gut wall. So your digestive system is the biggest and the most important immune organ in your body. So whenever the gut flora is abnormal, the immune system becomes abnormal too. It becomes unhealthy, it becomes unbalanced, and it reacts. It responds to the state of the gut flora. It responds to that river of toxins flowing right through your gut wall, right past all this immune system sitting there in the gut wall. And of course, it will respond. First, it will launch inflammation, which is a non-specific immediate response. And then if it's got some time to study particular undigested particles of food that are coming in through the leaky gut, it will start developing antibodies against those particles. It will then find a similar looking protein in your own body, in your organs, and attack them as well. And that's how we develop autoimmune disease. Rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and multiple sclerosis and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis and psoriasis and various forms of arthritis, osteoarthritis and thyroid problems and pancreatitis and all sorts of chronic conditions.
So it seems to me what we want to do is avoid having a leaky gut in the first place. But if we can't do that, then the thing would be to work to get it healed, right?
Absolutely. In order to start treating any chronic degenerative condition, whether it belongs into the group of physical symptoms, physical conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis or chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia or any of those other conditions I have listed, or whether they are mental illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, eating disorder, addictions, addictive behaviors, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, oppositional defiant disorder, epilepsy, any of those conditions, no matter how far away from the digestive system they present themselves, the treatment has to begin from the gut. We have to change the gut flora, we have to normalize it, which means we have to drive out pathogens and replace them with beneficial microbes, and we have to heal and seal the gut wall in the person. And that is what GAP's nutritional protocol is designed to do. It will heal and seal the gut wall, stop that leakiness, stop that river of toxicity flowing from the gut into the bloodstream and getting distributed around the body. And it will change the gut flora, it will normalize your gut flora. And as a result, your gut will become a major source of nourishment. It will start nourishing you instead of poisoning you. And the poisoning, that's what happens in all the GAPS people around the world.
All of these things that you've mentioned are on the rise. Is this because of the toxicities that you were talking about? What is poking the holes in our leaky gut? I guess that's my question.
Our environment, the environment that we human beings have created. And at the forefront of all degenerative illnesses in the world are developed first world, particularly English-speaking countries. English-speaking countries are absolute leaders in every degenerative disease that there is on the planet. The more developed, the more industrialized we become, the sicker our population becomes. We are exposed in our daily lives to about some 80,000 chemicals which do not exist in nature, which we human beings have invented. And they're in our personal care products, they're in our homes, in our offices, in the air we breathe, in the food we eat, in the drinks we drink, in everything. And these things simply accumulate in the body. And when they finish up in the digestive system, they poison our gut flora and they alter the very delicate balance between different microbes in the gut. Antibiotics have to be singled out as a particularly damaging element of our modern lifestyles. We are all exposed to antibiotics from a very young age because they're prescribed for every cough and sneeze. On top of that, we take a lot of antibiotics with our food and drink because antibiotics are routinely given in our industrial agriculture to animals, to birds, and many pesticides and fungicides and other chemicals that our crops are sprayed with are antibiotics in their nature. So we're all consuming antibiotics all the time, pretty much. On top of that, we take prescription medications. And broad-spectrum antibiotics, they kill our beneficial bacteria in the digestive system. These beneficial bacteria are very vulnerable to that group of drugs. They do recover, but it takes between 2 weeks to 2 months to recover. And that is a window of opportunity for pathogenic and opportunistic microbes, which those good bacteria were controlling, to get out of control. They've got 2 months to have a party, to grow large colonies, to spread, to occupy new niches in your digestive system. So the recovering beneficial flora has a fight on its hands. So from a course of antibiotic to the next course of antibiotic, to the next course of antibiotic, you have less and less of good left in your gut flora and more pathogenic, bad, disease-causing, until a certain threshold is reached when the pathogens become dominant, when they predominate, and that's when you start developing symptoms. In some people, their digestive system has a good capacity to compensate. So you may have quite an abnormal gut flora, but you have no symptoms, digestive symptoms, no diarrhea, no pain, no constipation, no gas. But in the majority of people, the first thing that happens, they develop digestive symptoms. Indigestion, or reflux, or diarrhea, or constipation, or bloating, or pain. Irritable bowel syndrome should be renamed as abnormal gut flora. That is one of the most common conditions. A large proportion of patients that doctors see on a daily basis are people with irritable bowel syndrome. So in order to heal the person, we have to focus on what we eat, because your digestive system is a long tube. What you fill that tube with has a direct effect on its well-being. So diet is the most important treatment. We have to change what we eat, how we cook our food, in order not to challenge already damaged digestive system, already struggling digestive system, but to nourish it, to support it, and to protect it.
Natasha's information is life-changing. If you want to hear the episode in its entirety, go to the Foundation's website or go to iTunes or wherever you get this show and look for episode number 5 entitled Gut, Key to Good Health. So it's a wrap. Thanks for being with us on this journey of year 1, Wise Traditions. It has been so much fun. You have just been listening to the Best of 2016 episode number 56. If you love this show, please tweet and share whatever you get your hands on. Get it out there and have a happy, healthy holiday season. We'll see you in 2017. Oh, and a big thanks to Podcast Village. You all are the best. We appreciate your support getting the show out there. Thank you.
Have you been enjoying these podcasts? Have you benefited from them or from the resources on the website or local chapter meetings? If so, please become a member of the Weston A. Price Foundation. It's only $25 for students and seniors and $40 for a general membership. Your contribution is critical for the continued work of the foundation. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for medical advice.